Hello, and welcome to this episode of In Discussion With from Pharmacy Update Online. Today I'm talking to Dame Laura Lee about the work of Maggie's Cancer Caring Centres. Please, could you start by introducing yourself?
Hello, Christine. I'm Laura Lee. I'm Chief Executive of Maggies.
And can you give us a brief overview of your role, what your current job involves?
Oh, overview of my job. Well, all sorts of things. I feel like I'm responsible primarily for the culture and values of what Maggie's does, which is places on hospital grounds where we employ professional experts where people can get the cancer support that they need and their family and friends. But I'm also responsible for supporting fundraising and income generation. So I spend quite a lot of my time with donors and supporters. And then also responsible for making sure that my colleagues get the care and support that they need. And I think my brilliant bit of my job is I employ fantastic people who are much better at the areas of expertise that I'm no good at, but I hopefully help bring a kind of that leadership together.
You've given us some tantalising glimpses there of the work of Maggie's, and I want to come back to that. But first, a little bit about the history. The first Maggie's Centre opened in 1996, and now there are 26. What's the story behind this, and how did it all start?
So Maggie's Centre started by a woman called Maggie Keswick-Jenks, who had a recurrence of her breast cancer and went to her local district general hospital, was told that she only had 3 months to live, and then came to the cancer centre in Edinburgh for a second opinion. And I, at that time, worked as a clinical nurse specialist for Professor Bob Leonard, who became her oncologist. And she started to have treatment with us. And it was through her treatment at the Western General Hospital where she talked about the fact that the NHS was doing a fantastic job of taking care of her medical kind of requirements, but that the other bits of what could she do to help herself, how to talk to her children, how to deal with the overwhelming kind of information and advice that her friends were throwing her way, that wasn't something that the hospital and the NHS was set up to deal with. And because she was married to an American and was had access to the kind of US approach to medical care of that, how to be an active participant in your own care. She sort of started talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could do something here in Edinburgh to help people like myself get that additional bit of support. And so that led to the idea of a handbook. And then when she was in remission, she went to the States and saw what they were doing, and they had places where people could go to for that additional support. And she decided that what we needed in Edinburgh was a place alongside the NHS that people with cancer and their family and friends could get expert support. And that led to the kind of idea of the first centre in Edinburgh.
Hmm, amazing that she had the energy to do that whilst dealing with a recurrence of her own cancer. How did she do it?
So Maggie was an incredible woman in that she she had a background in philanthropy and had helped establish the first hospice in Hong Kong. So how to take something that didn't exist in Hong Kong, wasn't part of the culture, was something that she had done with prior to her own breast cancer diagnosis. And I think her inquisitive and curiosity of what she could do to help herself was naturally led to how could I, through my own experience, help others. I think also she was a Catholic, so she'd been brought up with giving away 10% of your income was part of the kind of culture that she'd been brought up with. And for me, it was just so lucky that there I was as a clinical nurse specialist being alongside a patient who was forcing us, because you have to remember this is 30 years, this is kind of like almost pre the internet, of someone who wanted to understand what was happening to her medically, what were her blood results telling her, of what could she do to help herself in terms of diet and well-being. We take that for granted now that people want to participate in helping themselves, but at the time that was very unusual.
Very interesting. I've also noticed that all the Maggie's centres are different and they're all architecturally beautiful. Is this part of the plan?
So Maggie and her husband were both, she was trained as a landscape designer and architect, and her husband was an architectural critic. But she talked about the fact that it should be, the visit to the hospital should be, yippee, I'm going to the hospital today. I've got an opportunity to have my questions and worries answered, but I also should leave feeling better than when I arrived. And she talked about the hospital environments being such that you rarely leave feeling better than when you arrive because of the strip lights, the lack of views out to gardens and nature. So she was very much passionate that the Maggie Centre should be a buildings that would do a job of caring for people, because by the very nature that people, by sitting in them, yes, talking to one of Maggie's professional experts, but that the building would say, this is a place that I feel valued in, that I matter in, that I have a view out to a garden where I feel hopeful in the moment, because this place is intriguing and inspiring, is beautiful. And I, as a very pragmatic, practical nurse, didn't understand the role of buildings until our first centre opened, and people with cancer that I had been looking after in the hospital came in and told me things about their worries and concerns in their lives that they hadn't told me in the hospital. And I had no new skills at that point. And so it really alerted me to the whole idea that buildings can actually do a job of work in themselves and can help people feel safe, feel more relaxed, less anxious, and therefore reveal some of the things that they're worrying and concerned about more easily. And so yeah, Maggie herself gave a great insight into the architecture and buildings can help health professionals be more effective in their work.
Now, can we explore what kinds of support Maggie's provides?
So Maggie's offers support to people, really helping people feel more in control when people often with a cancer diagnosis talk about feeling out of control, where they talk about feeling alone even when they've got a loving family around them. So that, how does Maggie's help people feel less alone? And then how does Maggie's help people feel more hopeful even when everything around them makes them feel kind of helpless? And that hope can be in the moment, in the conversation, in the sense of the moment of the day. And so our professional experts that we employ, who are generally cancer nurses by background, clinical psychologists, and people with benefits, and who can help people with kind of financial, practical worries that come with a cancer diagnosis, are all about helping people feel more in control. So how do I talk to my employer? How do I talk to my mortgage lender when I know my finances are going to be interrupted through my cancer treatment? How do I talk to my children about my cancer diagnosis? That all of those things that our experts can help people with are all about helping people feel more in control, more hopeful in the moment, and less alone. That sitting at our kitchen table, meeting someone else, or even just observing that someone else is going through cancer and that they're not alone, is what the kind of Maggie's buildings and then our experts working in our buildings kind of help people do.
So these are experts, not just well-meaning amateurs.
So Maggie's employees have been working as senior clinical nurse specialists in the hospital, or in palliative care, and understand the NHS and navigating it. And for a lot of people, they've come into Maggie's front door because the doctor has told them, I know you've got more questions than answers. Your 10 minutes is up. Why don't you go over? And Maggie's cancer support specialists can help people find a way of understanding what it is that they've been told in that consultation, what it means to go for scans, what the waiting involves, what the different sort of treatment options that they have been told that they have to undergo, helping people understand that you only retain 10% of what you've been told when you're anxious. Actually, it wasn't that the doctor didn't tell you those information, it's just that your anxiety meant that you couldn't hear it. How can we help put all of those bits and pieces together so you can make sense of what's happening to you? So yes, it's very critical to Maggie's that we employ people who understand the NHS, who are there to ensure that the person with cancer has the best relationship with their doctor and clinical team as possible, because we know that that team is critical to a good outcome for the patient. And so that expertise is crucial in ensuring that. That doesn't mean to say that we don't have volunteers who work alongside our cancer experts to help with the welcome and the cup of tea, but it's the expertise of our staff that's really, really crucial.
And now a practical question. How do people access Maggie's support? It sounds brilliant, but I know that when you're feeling ill or a bit down, it's hard to screw up the courage to negotiate with a receptionist or even to explain what you think you need.
So we know that it's very hard for people to walk in the door for the first time, partly because that might be acknowledging that I've got cancer, that might be a worry about I'm going to have to talk about how I'm feeling. And so we know that people finding their way through the front door is crucially helped by our NHS colleagues, the clinical nurse specialists, the doctors suggesting to people, why don't you come over? And then we know what's really crucial when people do open the front door is it's how they're welcomed in. And there's no reception desk at Maggie's. There's people's body language gives off that it's their first time. Someone will walk towards them and then lead them over to the kettle. You'll start to make a cup of tea with someone and then sit down. And it's in the act of being welcomed, the kettle boiling, the body language of being alongside someone and then sitting means that people have had time just to kind of breathe a little bit, get a sense of where they are, to think that actually I'm in somewhere that feels comfortable and okay. And then the conversation can then start. And then the other really important thing in comparison to the NHS is there's no waiting. So you get access to a Maggie's cancer support specialist immediately. You might wait 2 weeks to see the clinical psychologist, but you'll get support the minute you walk through the door, and you don't have to make an appointment to come back. And so that again helps us establish that trusting relationship that the support is there wherever and whenever they walk through that door, and that the welcome is there every visit. And then also our team is small so that they're known. And again, what people talk about within the NHS is every time they come for the treatment is they're seeing a different doctor or nurse. No one knows their story. No one knows that they're worrying about who's going to look after their dog or how to navigate the childcare whilst they're going through treatment. By our cancer support teams being small, and people then when they return can make their own tea or coffee, means that they will always see the person who knows them and knows some of the issues that they're facing. And that's a really crucial bit to Maggie's being successful in what we do.
Hmm. And how does Maggie's relate to Macmillan Cancer Support, Marie Curie, High Cancer Care, and the other cancer charities?
So you're absolutely right. There are many cancer charities. And I think one of the things that Maggie sees itself is we're a roof, if you like, to what we do, but also a roof to help people access the other specialist cancer charities support. So we have all of the other cancer charities literature in our centres so that when people come in, they can take a Macmillan leaflet away or a specialist leaflet from a charity called Bladder Cancer UK or Prostate Cancer UK, so they don't have to make another telephone call. We also work closely with local charities so that support groups can meet in our centre. So, for example, our centre in West London works with a cancer charity called Black Cancer Care, and their support groups meet in our centre, and also a Chinese cancer group. And then we work with Teenage Cancer Trust and Young Person versus Cancer, and again, their groups can meet in our centre. So that collaborating with other cancer charities is really crucial. And the reason for that is that they have specialist expertise for the specialist cancer charities that they're working with, but also for the person with cancer who comes to Maggie's, they then don't have to go somewhere else. And we can offer a room and a space rather than a church hall or a grubby kind of corner of a hospital meeting room that you're never quite sure if it's going to be available or not. So that co-working with other cancer charities is really a crucial bit of what Maggie's does.
Hmm. What you describe is tremendous, but how on earth is this all funded?
So Maggie's is funded fully by philanthropy from amazing array of different individuals who help us give large capital sums to help us build our buildings, but to people who also fundraise through cake sales and running marathons, etc. So the full array. And what we also know is that when people are going through cancer or are starting on that point of recovery or may well be navigating post-treatment the late effects of their treatment, which, you know, when cancer comes to an end, that's not it over. But for many, doing something, doing some fundraising is a real sense of giving something back that is empowering and joyful. So fundraising can be a really positive metaphor as well as to how people sort of contribute. But yeah, all philanthropic funding.
Hmm. Could you give us some examples of fundraising activities?
The types of fundraising that people do are extraordinary. Abseiling down buildings to yes, exactly, not my cup of tea, to doing ultra marathon events. We had a group of supporters that all went and climbed Mount Tukul, 4,200 meters high, to making cakes and raising money through selling cakes. People are extraordinarily generous, and the pub quiz is always a good one. But yeah, people are amazing as to how they fundraise for Maggie's.
Hmm. Some very inventive ideas there. Now we've got a picture of what Maggie's does, it occurs to me that the cancer landscape has changed considerably over the past 30 years. What impact has this had on Maggie's services?
You're absolutely right. The cancer landscape has radically shifted from when we first started, where it was 1 in 4 were getting a cancer diagnosis, to now it's 1 in 2. And we know that we are seeing a 2 to 3% increase in the cancer population, certainly predicted by 2040. So the demands for cancer treatment and management into our NHS is just growing. And we know that we've got even more treatment options available for people, which is brilliantly helping people, more people be cured. And also, when cancer does come back, is helping people live longer. But that increases the burden on the NHS, but it also increases the emotional and psychological burden for people with cancer who are living with ongoing uncertainty, with different treatment options and more complicated and personalised treatment options. So I think looking forward, I think Maggie's actually is even more needed to work in partnership with our NHS colleagues, rather than I think what I thought 30 years ago when we started, that Maggie's wouldn't be needed at this point in time. And that for me is good news that we're still needed, but is not what I had anticipated in my kind of cancer health career.
Hmm. I'd like to pick up on that. You started as a specialist oncology nurse, what made you take the leap into Maggie's?
If I'm honest, Christine, I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. So when we were working on the first centre, and we actually advertised for someone to run it and interviewed and didn't make an appointment. Um, Maggie was still alive, but her cancer she was back on active treatment, and so we knew that time was more limited. And it was a sort of conversation between the two of us of would I do it, and me suggesting that maybe I would do it. I knew nothing about running a charity. And I had set myself, I think, a fairly traditional NHS career in my mind. And so my first month of working for Maggie's was in an accountancy firm, learning how to write a business plan and read a balance sheet. And I think where I've been really lucky is I've just had amazing business leaders, both within the health service and beyond, who've supported me in my learning, that has allowed me to sort of have this most interesting career of working with architects and designers, delivering gardens, but still working in the area that I love, which is in cancer care, and still working alongside the NHS, which I am so passionate about. So yeah, I've been really, really lucky.
Hmm, great that this is so rooted in your training and experience as a specialist oncology nurse, rather than, say, someone coming in with business plans that just don't sit comfortably in healthcare.
I see it quite often in the charity sector where they're often employing the fundraiser as it becomes the chief executive. And so then it all becomes about the money rather than about what is it that we do, and how do we do it. Um and and then I think, because we've got people who are running our centres are all clinicians in effect, then I think that keeps us about what we do for people with cancer rather than, yeah, about the money. Obviously, the money is important, but it's how you're deploying it to help the beneficiaries that's really crucial.
Hmm, hmm. Now, Maggie's is staffed by specialists. Do you have any trouble recruiting?
But on the whole, we have no problems recruiting. And the great news is that when we do recruit people, they stay with us. So our centres that are over 20 years have colleagues who've been working in them since the beginning. And again, that means that we've seen some of our centre head colleagues have seen the next generation of a family coming in who are going through cancer. But again, the beautiful bit of that is that their story, or the story of their family, is known to the person who they're seeing in the centre, and they know they've got a wealth of expertise.
Hmm. You describe a picture of the health service as many of us hoped it would always be, and it sounds like a very nice place to work. How have you made it so?
I think it's about giving your colleagues kind of freedom and empowerment to do the right thing for the person that's in front of them. And but my main thing is, because people have come from the NHS, is that you don't have to retire at Maggie's just when you've got all their skills. Start reframing. So I do that from the beginning when they arrive. Of don't think of retiring at 55. You've got all their skills. If you need to go part-time, or if you need to, um, we'll accommodate that. But keep working, because you've got so much still to contribute and offer.
Hmm. So my next question is, what next for Maggie's?
So we know that there are 60 cancer centres across the UK, and there are obviously many cancer units that are also delivering chemotherapy, but the bulk of cancer patients have to go through at some point a cancer centre, where all the radiotherapy is. So our vision and our mission is to be at all 60 cancer centres. Um, We hope to end this year with 27 centres operational. So we've got quite a lot more to do. And we need an army of people to help us make that possible. We also have 4 centres open and operational overseas that work financially independently. But we know that there's going to be a 5th centre opening in Stavanger, Norway, that were inspired because of the relationship that Norway has with Aberdeen, that they needed a Maggie centre too. So yeah, more Maggies is on the cards.
And my final question, do you have a message for frontline healthcare staff?
What I would say to our NHS colleagues is that Maggies are there to work in partnership with you. You have got the toughest of jobs of looking after people with cancer, delivering their chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, doing some difficult surgical techniques. But we're there to work alongside you to support them and their families in that emotional, psychological impact of cancer. And then also, when cancer treatment comes to an end, for the person with cancer, that's not the end of the road for them. They are having to adjust to sometimes short-term effects of their treatment, but often some permanent and late effects. And I would urge you to work with Maggie so that people with cancer and their family and friends can get the best outcome by working together. You can take care of the medical components brilliantly, and we can help support you with the psychological and emotional.
Dame Laura Lee, thank you very much for talking to us about your work. That really has been terrifically interesting. For more information about Dame Laura's work and the Maggie's Cancer Caring Centres, please visit the website using the links in the description. And be sure to subscribe for more news, videos, journals, and podcasts. For updates straight to your inbox, please follow the links below. And thanks for watching.